Welcome to Gaia's Love, a podcast of brief messages to help humanity bridge the gap to the new earth. My name is Vivienne Gerard. It is my delight to be a scribe for consciousness today, sharing the wisdom that flows through from Source. Here we go. Episode 54. It is Wednesday today, and I am hosting a new moon circle almost a week early, so I feel the tingliness and anticipation that I always get around the new moon a little early, which is so much fun. So you get some of that juicy vibe coming through in today's podcast. It is hot, so hot here in Cincinnati. We're in the final few days of a heat wave, and I think it's making everyone just a little cranky and tired and ready for fall, ready for something to shift or break in the weather. It's a little intense heat-wise. So yeah, today we'll just dive right in. Today, the topic that came forward in my meditation was about languages. How I got there is a long rambling road, and it's just a typical meditation where you start in one point, you move your way through, and then suddenly you're somewhere else. You're like, yes, that's what I want to talk about today. So I won't give you the whole backstory, but the topic is about interpretation and understanding. The actual title is Learning Languages. And yeah, so when I grew up overseas, we were surrounded by many different languages. In South Africa, Afrikaans and English are pretty widely spoken. Depending on the area you're in, Afrikaans is the primary language and English is secondary. And then there are many native languages. So when I was in elementary school, I spoke English, that's my primary language, and then we studied Afrikaans, we studied Sotho, which is one of the languages that, man, it's tough. It was a hard one to learn that I remember. It's much like Japanese. For me, it's a completely different sound and way to express. But much like people, I think, in Europe and many other countries around the world, regions around the world, there are lots of different languages and sounds that are brought or introduced to us when we're young. And so we grow up knowing that there are other ways to express ourselves, and it takes effort and attention to learn them. But our system gets wired at a young age to learn in I'm having a hard time finding the words. Isn't that funny? Learning languages. Let's start with English. Oh, funny. When I grew up hearing lots of different languages around me, it opens up a way to learn in my brain that I believe lasts for a lifetime. If we grow up with just one language and we aren't introduced to the other sounds, it can feel overwhelming to start to learn other languages, and so we often don't try, or it feels like too much, so we don't even begin the first step. I believe some of that really is just from fear of the unknown. So as a young child learning different languages, when I moved to the States and we were offered languages in high school, I started with German, and I studied German for 5 years, from 8th grade all the way through graduation. And then in 9th or 10th grade, I started Spanish at the same time. And so I was immersed in different sounds throughout the day. I fell in love with Spanish. It's my favorite. It's so beautiful. It's so lyrical. It's just a gorgeous language. And so I majored in that in college. And what I have found now in my older years, in my 40s, is that I also like the sounds of Sanskrit, the it's also very lyrical, and there's such power in such brief sounds. You know, it has all this beautiful meaning behind it. And so I was just pondering that because I was chanting in Sanskrit as I was meditating, which is probably where this all stemmed from. And it brought me to this awareness that we are all learning different languages energetically right now. We have believed that what we see in the physical right in front of us, what we can touch and sense and put our hands and our physical expression against or into, that is what's real. And so that is our native language, if you want to call it that, as humans. It's physical. The intuitive ability is another language, and I believe as children we're all born with this intuitive language. It's just natural for us, and what we as adults call make-believe for children, or imaginary friends, or fairies, or whatever we want to call that. We it's not quite ignore, we downplay the truth of that to our children. And so children are raised to start to ignore their intuitive abilities. They're raised, many, not all, but many children are raised to turn off the language of the senses, the sixth sense, the third eye, the intuitive knowing. We're taught to disregard that. And it's with purpose. You know, our world is a physical world, and that's why we're here on this planet, to have that experience. And not having full access to all of our sensory abilities allows for a richer, more in-depth physical experience. Until now. Dun, 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 dun. Until now. Until now. And what I just keep feeling and getting clear messages about, and I know this in the cells of my body, the physical cells of my body know this intuitively, that we are in a time of transition where intuition, the unseen senses, are a new language that we're relearning or remembering, or we all knew it as children, that we're remembering. And so it can be unknown, uncomfortable, a little awkward. Our learning of these languages, whatever our unique one is as a soul in a human body, we have our own unique language that we bring here to this physical planet. As we start to remember that and awaken to that, it can feel like the world is speaking a language we don't understand. When I went to Costa Rica for the first time, as much as I had studied Spanish, I was in front of all these people who were talking so fast and with such enthusiasm, and they lost me like the second word. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know how to do it. And it took that immersion of 6 weeks to be fluent by the time I came back. It's the same for us as we start to connect with these languages that are not English, that are, or whatever our native languages are in sounds and words. These are intuitive languages. Some might call light languages. It's the ability to be aware of the unseen that's always around us and moving through us. And then learn how to interpret that, how to understand what those words, those, I'm stumbling over words. Learning to interpret the ways that the energy is being expressed. Yeah, maybe we should call them energy languages. Learning energy languages. That feels true. Yeah, for some of us, we hear. So for me, I often, it's almost like a sound is in my ear, and I'm interpreting what that sound is and translating it into English words. For some, it's visual, so it's like you can see images or movies playing out in your third eye, in your mind's eye, and you're trying to interpret what those are and then translate them into a language that makes sense to the people around us. For some, for me, it's often feeling. I can just sense or feel what's happening, what needs to flow through, what the story is, what the words are. That's how I create these podcasts. I start with just one or two words, and then I sit in this space with my eyes closed, and I'm just feeling whatever is moving through me and expressing it in my native language of English. I'm translating live in the moment. And it was very unfamiliar when I started this process, what I call scribing, bringing energy through me and out into consciousness. It was very unfamiliar and very uncomfortable, and I spoke very slowly, and it sounded like I was a recording. it was just a difficult language to get used to, process to get used to. The more I've done it, just like the more I spoke Spanish, the more I practiced it, the more I attempted to interpret, the more I made mistakes and then figured out what the right word was that I was trying to say when I'd said the wrong word in Spanish and offended somebody. It's just like that. We interpret and practice and master. We master our energy languages. So it takes time, it takes attention, it takes patience. It takes such trust and faith to believe your ability, to believe the information that flows through you. And so it's I use the word individual or unique. It's a very unique language for each one of us, because our soul has unique experiences and gifts that it's bringing through this physical human body, that it's bringing through into this physical world. And so no two people are going to have the same type of process or language that they will bring through. Everyone's is unique, and that's the way it's supposed to be. But we learn from each other. We develop trust in ourselves by witnessing others developing trust in themselves. We begin to create new ways of playing together when our languages become more familiar and we can share them with someone else, and it helps the other person to see something they didn't know, and then suddenly everyone is starting to light up with their own ways of expressing energy. It is one of the most satisfying, thrilling, beautiful experiences to be in a foreign country and speak the language enough that you can communicate and get where you need to get to and have the exchanges with people you want to have, and to see the delight in someone's eyes when, I'll speak for myself, to see the delight in people's eyes when I'm speaking their language, when I've taken the time to learn their language and I'm making the attempt to communicate in their language. It's so exciting. They love it. They love it. And often when I was traveling in Costa Rica, I've been back several times, and everyone always asks, like, where'd you learn your Spanish? I'm like, right here. Yes, I studied in college, but I learned it right here in this country that I love so much. So we know our native energy languages, that we are as souls, that we express as souls. And we came here to this planet at this time to bring those languages forward and share them with others and delight with each other. Like, oh, I see you. It's you. I know that language. I have played with you on other places, other dimensions. Like, you're familiar to me. That's what will happen as we all start trusting our own unique expressions as a soul. So just like you would with a language like Spanish or German or Italian or Portuguese or any language, you practice, you take the time to listen to how others express the language, to listen to the conversations, to memorize some of the processes and the words. You just invest your time and attention in it. And then you trust, you put yourself into the moments where you just express. Like me in a restaurant in Costa Rica asking for the food that I want, hoping I got it right, but I'm going to eat whatever I got. That's how we play. That's how we play with our languages. So I encourage you, sit in meditation, walk outside in nature, pray, be quiet with your soul, and begin learning what your energy languages are, and then start playing and expressing them. Thank you for tuning in to today's vibration. Let's take this message of pure love out into all of our communities and continue expanding love here on Gaia. So much love from my heart to yours.